Hello, everybody, and welcome to another webinar by Cooperation Africa, which are to raise awareness about cooperatives generally and in Africa in particular. My name is Adote, and I shall be moderating this session today. Please introduce yourselves on the chat, and remember to place your questions in the chat or in the question and answer section that is provided. Your questions will help to shape the discussion after our presenter has made his presentation. The session will last for about an hour at the most, for about an hour and a quarter. And the speaker is being asked to speak for about 35 minutes so that we have at least 15 minutes of questions and answers at the end. And I shall indicate when there are 5 minutes to go to the end of the presentation. But before we hear our speaker today, for the benefit of those of you who do not know much about Cooperation Africa, let me say a few words about us. We're a membership organization registered in and operating out of Ghana, but our focus is Africa. We have members from over 12 African countries, and our intention is to catalyze the formation of critical masses of Cooperation African members in as many countries as possible, so that they can engage to support cooperative formation and development in their own national spaces. We do this because we are of the view that cooperatives have many advantages, with each type bringing its own special kind of benefit. So, for example, procurement cooperatives will allow people to buy their inputs together and as a result, get them at a cheaper price. Marketing cooperatives allow individuals to sell their produce together. That way, they secure a better price for their produce, be it agricultural, industrial, or fashion goods, or indeed, be it legal, building, transport, and IT services. Credit unions, a type of consumer cooperative, enable people to save together and borrow at cheaper rates. And finally, producer cooperatives allow people to create their own employment by establishing jointly owned and democratically run businesses without waiting for others to give them a job. Cooperative businesses have a much better chance of competing with foreign capital and have the potential to become bigger sooner. All it needs is for consumption habits to support local production and thereby to help improve the standards of local production. The baseline is that because cooperatives are jointly owned and democratically run businesses, they hardwire both democracy and equity into the economy and society. Cooperation Africa has three main programming areas. First, we engage in research and democracy, meaning we conduct research into various aspects of cooperative formation and development. And then based on our findings, we try to persuade those with decision-making authority to create a more enabling environment for cooperatives. To that end, we have just commissioned 4 studies focusing on Ghana that will be completed in early 2025. We anticipate having funds to conduct similar country-focused research in 2025 and in 2026, when we will look at 2 additional countries. Second, we involve ourselves in education and training. In the first, we hold events such as this one, intended to inform and educate people about how to form and run cooperatives as successful businesses. To spearhead our training, we are planning to harness the skills of our members to support cooperatives in need through what we will be calling a cooperative support network. Our members will be invited to provide support in the forms of A, cooperative governance, or B, cooperative business management, or finally C, job-related operational technical expertise, i.e. how to do a job properly. Cooperation Africa should then become a membership movement that is making a concrete and positive contribution to cooperative development and people's lives. Finally, our fundraising and financing program will continue to involve raising funds from philanthropic sources and later on to cooperative. We plan to partner with suitable financial institutions so that we are able to channel funds to cooperative on terms that we will choose. And we have just commissioned a study to help us find the best partner locally in Ghana at the moment. We therefore invite all of those who support any aspect of this mission to join us to move this organization and African people generally towards economic, political, and cultural self-empowerment. And now I want to introduce this week's speaker. In 1980, in the wake of the successful national liberation struggle to free Southern Rhodesia, as it was then, from white settler colonialism, Andrew Nyathi helped found the Simukai Cooperative. Following a negotiated settlement between Zimbabwe's liberation movements and the settler colonists, he and other demobilized fighters pooled their demobilization funds and came together to set up the Simukai Cooperative. They came from ZIPRA, the armed wing of the Zimbabwe African People's Union, or ZAPU, to which Andrew belonged, and from ZANLA, the armed wing of the Zimbabwe African National Union, or ZANU. This in itself was quite novel at the time. Andrew served as chairman of the Simukai Cooperative for 17 years, and also served in leadership capacities in other cooperative initiatives, including the collective self-finance scheme to provide finance to cooperatives, and the management outreach training school for rural and urban development to help improve farming methods in Zimbabwe. The Simukai Cooperative, which started with 30 members and 1,760 hectares of land, achieved commercial levels of crop and animal production, and soon became the largest agricultural producer cooperative in Southern Africa. Andrew was awarded a Ashoka Fellowship in 1990, and in 1997, he left Simukai and Zimbabwe and settled first in Lesotho and then eventually in South Africa, where he currently lives and is active. Simukai Cooperative sadly ceased to exist as a cooperative in 2008, but Andrew has told his story in his book, Tomorrow is Built Today, which was published in 1990 by Anvil Press. And we will be circulating a link to that book after this session has been completed. And so we're very lucky to have him here with us to tell his story in person. And I welcome you, Andrew Nyathi. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As have been introduced, I am Andrew Nyathi from Zimbabwe, and I would like to present to you the history of Simukai Cooperative. Really, I'm presenting it as lived experiences by our people. As already has been explained, we came together as cadres from ZIPRA, and we pulled together our demobilization payouts, which were given at the start of the independence. When we got our independence, we chose to say, how are we going to live? Because we were no longer going to be, some of us were going to be integrated in the army, and some were not going to be integrated in the army. So those who were not integrated in the army, we decided to come together. There was a program which we called Soldiers in Economic Development. So that initiative was initiated by the party. So we pulled together our resources and bought a farm. And the farm which we bought was about 1,760 hectares. It was a commercial farm. We bought it with the money which we got from demobilization, and it had we didn't have all the other things, but because we had pulled together our resources, we started to negotiate with the farmers and other people to be able to acquire a tractor for a start. In fact, when we started, we were borrowing or hiring tractors in order to be able to move forward and start the work. Can we move forward? So what it means is that, or what we achieved is that we proved one point. We proved that we can be able to grow food and feed ourselves. Food security, we managed to achieve for ourselves and also to make a big contribution to the country's economic emancipation. We therefore look at our idea or our cooperatives as one that was part of the economic emancipation, because as everybody knows, when we got, when you are colonized, as most of us know, you do not have the economy in your hands. It is in other people. And remember, the economy the economy was ravaged by the sanctions which were imposed against Zimbabwe. And although we didn't have knowledge, much knowledge, we also decided that we will be able to train ourselves so that we will be able to control, manage, and own our own resources, which is very fundamental, because the idea really was to establish a new society where we were going to put behind us colonization. Can we move on? Let me talk about the overview of this idea. So what we did is that we proved that cooperatives could be able or can be able to exist. And let me also say that when we started to put this idea in operation, remember that at that time there was Cold War, where two systems were competing, the one from USSR and the Americans, and these are the people who were dominating the system of established economic engagements. So what we did on our side was then to try to look at how we can be able to do our own things in our own way, which I would call Ubuntu. In other words, Africanize what we wanted, what we were doing, make the approach of working together. But in any case, in Zimbabwe, we have got the experience of working together, which we used to call Elima, which was working together. So when there's a challenge, one would organize the community, so we all go and work together in that to help the other person. So or work together to actually improve. And then the other thing which is important, which I must mention, is that cooperatives cannot be cooperatives if there is no principle of solidarity. Solidarity is absolutely important, because that's where you're going to get the supply, that's where you're going to get your market and so on. So it is very important that as cooperatives, as individuals, you work together. But over and above that, the cooperatives themselves must be able to work together, both in the way vertically and also horizontally. What I mean is that cooperatives in the same sector should be able to work together, but also when they want to source from other sectors, they should be able to do the sourcing. Next. So, as I have already stated, that the idea really was to try to find our own way of doing things. And I must mention that I know that people in Tanzania and Zambia were also trying to implement ideas of Ujamaa, humanism, and so on. So we also tried to learn from that, because remember, colonization has been very cruel, or was very cruel, in that they de-skilled us as Africans. They de-skilled us. So it was important, or it is important, that we must skill and reskill as the people who want to be able to control or to participate and change the economic face of the country. I must also say that when we discuss about membership, this is absolutely important, that the people or the persons who are cooperating must understand that they are autonomous. They are working together voluntarily. So, but as they do this, they are trying to establish an economic, social, and cultural needs, to meet the cultural needs and aspirations of the members themselves, who are running their enterprise democratically. When I'm saying democratically, I mean the control of the principles. All the members participate in establishing or deciding about the principles which they are going to use or apply on any specific thing. That is one. Number two is that membership must be based on values of self-help, self-responsibility. In other words, the consciousness of the members must be high enough to understand, or they must grow up enough to understand what they are in for. Because as we know, that the economies which we come from is where there is the boss, the owner of the business, and you are the worker, and you get told what to do. But now you have to participate, you are equal, and you have to also help others. So it is important that the members understand that aspect. And the other value, which is very important, people must be absolutely ethical and honest. And members, the membership must be open, but not open to say beyond the capacity of the enterprise. So in other words, what I'm saying is that if the enterprise needs 15 workers, you can't have 20 members working on that, in that enterprise, because you will simply collapse the enterprise. So when we say the membership must be open, it must be open, but we have to make sure that the enterprise can be able to carry the members so that they can be able to earn a living. So The cooperative principles, I know that ILO has developed principles, but those principles which say membership is open and voluntary. But as I have already stated, but it must be within the capacity of the business. And when we say this is important because as a business, you want to establish a new kind of business, but that new kind of business should be able to perform as any other business or even better. So that members can benefit accordingly. And also the customers, the general members, the general communities should be able to benefit. So there's something which is very important, which I want to state, that people in government who registered cooperatives, people in NGOs and so on, they make the mistake of wanting to control the cooperatives. The cooperatives must be autonomous and independent so that they are not an extension or a site of an NGO or government. That is very important because that means the members would be able to put as much effort as possible. So, and this is very crucial. Then the other thing is that education, training and training, so that people can have the necessary skills to be able to contribute optimally to what the enterprise needs. And it is also important that the cooperatives, the other people who are not members of the cooperative, should see the benefit of cooperatives. So, and I believe that cooperatives are the future. So if cooperatives are the future, they must be able to attract by their own practice other people who are not members of these cooperatives, so that others can also be able to start theirs. And it is the duty of the cooperators or cooperative members, when they got the chance to educate others, to cooperate with each other and educate others, so that they can be able to establish their own cooperatives as well. So the activities of Simukai were basically an agricultural cooperative. So the experiences which I'm sharing with you, therefore, are largely from that perspective of an agricultural cooperative. So the first important thing, or the first important principle, is that of leadership. The leadership should be able to inspire both the members, the new ones, the ones who are joining, and the ones who are already members on a continuous basis, so that members are always directed and guided as they implement or as they work on their cooperatives. Then leadership, I am purposely separating leadership from management. Management is the next important activity, and that activity is about ensuring that the enterprise which you are engaged in is able to perform successfully, both as an enterprise, production-wise, financially, technically, and technologically. So what I mean there is that you can't say because it's a cooperative, therefore they must use things which are less technical or less technological. We must be able to compete in the system, because we see ourselves as the future of the economy. And so the operations therefore need people who are adequately skilled enough to be able to allow the cooperative to compete. Let's say, let me give an example that you are buying bread. So you want to buy bread, but you want to buy the good bread. You can't say to yourself, no, our bread is not going to be so nice. Our bread must be the same or even much better than the ones which you are competing with. So, and we should be able to have the skill to be able to sell what we produce or the services which we provide. It should be interesting to customers. So the other issue is that the business or the cooperative must be run as a business and do all the essential things which the business needs, so that members can know what has happened to the business. So I think that as a business, this is very, very important. So let me just summarize what I tried to introduce to you first. You can see on this slide that from 1979, when the Lancaster House was concluded, this was the time of beginning to think and discuss about what happens after the liberation of the country by the freedom fighters. This is very important. So then it was decided politically from 1980 to 1982 that they engaged a process of deep demobilization and integration. Others were going to the army, and others were joining or getting involved with the broader society of Zimbabwe. So then when that was done, then the next thing which happened, particularly on the Zipra side, we had to begin to say, how do we get engaged in the economy? So, and that's when we began to discuss the ideas of cooperatives. And remember, we have learned also this idea from previous socialist countries where we were training. So we began to establish around that time, 1981 to 1983, we began to establish the cooperatives. A lot of us got involved in different ways with cooperatives, who bought buses, who got into transport, others got into distribution, many other cooperatives. And so these cooperatives, we became quite a force. So we established then, in order to be able to create that solidarity or that working together, an organization which we called OXIM, which was the Organization of Collective Cooperatives in Zimbabwe. So we worked together. From time to time, we would exchange knowledge, exchange experiences, and so on, and also exchange or share ideas. And this continued, I think I can go up until around 1995. So, and then the government adopted a policy which was introduced by the World Bank. It was ESAP. So that policy really collapsed the economy. So, and that as cooperative, that affected us as well as cooperatives. So it became so difficult. So we were not an island. So we depended on the performance of the broader economy. So our cooperatives began to falter and fail in many aspects because the adoption was, remember, the adoption of ESAP was what was for us all and everyone, for each one for themselves. So that's what happened. And however, some of the cooperatives in the commercial sector remained, and some are still there. So I think there I am just putting a few facts about our operations. One of the facts was that we were able to produce at one time up to 10,000 chickens, and would sell 60 tons of crops in a year, and we were able to sell cattle as many as 90 per month, and pigs about 300. So it was really flourishing, and we became, and at this stage, I think even up to today, I feel we made the greatest achievement. We're so proud of this. But also, we're not only cooperators, but we're also social people or social. So we needed other issues which were apart from production. So we established welfare, we did education, training, we established a school, we established our own supermarket, and we established training, adult training for ourselves and our children. So, and the communities in the surrounding of our cooperatives also brought their children. And I am very happy that I can say today that school is still existing today, and those people who worked with us, who were our neighbors, are still enjoying to send their children to our school. So this we managed to do without the support of the politicians, so to speak. So the other issues is that what we did, we would organize ourselves and do awards to recognize what the contributions of the members are. Some of the awards were some things like outstanding management achievements, determined and committed leadership qualities. We would also, if depending on how long you work, if, for example, every 5 years we were able to give people certificates and call the neighbors and so on, and celebrate. So we really were enjoying at this point enjoying our achievements. It was so good. I don't know if someone said, "Can we start that again?" I would gladly do it again. So here I am just, I would just like to explain that, which I've been already explaining, that we tried to say when we are in the meetings, we discuss principles of how we're going to run this thing and so on. And then the management would then discuss or deal with the production affairs of the cooperatives. And we had departments, let's say piggery, cattle, chickens, poultry, cropping, and so on, and also the supermarket, and also the welfare. The M there simply stands for a management committee, and the M's there on against department stands for management, and ES just stands for enterprises. So enterprises, meaning the specific poultry, for example, was an enterprise. So every single one of us, by the time we reached 10 years, every single one of us had a specialty in a specific enterprise. So I think many people will tell you that African leadership is a problem. We have problems because people, they throw away or they forget their history, they don't discuss issues, and this creates a problem. So the leadership, I learned that leadership you have to discuss and you have to live it by showing by example. You live there by example. So as I said, that the cooperatives cannot be controlled from outside themselves. So cooperatives are an organization. Every other society or where there is a group of people or even ants, you need leadership. One ant must have a big head to say, we're going this way, so that everybody follows. So it is very important that leadership is understood, that it gives direction, it gives guidelines. So we need that commitment in leadership. We need the understanding so that we understand the environment, the political environment of the society, where you are going, what you are doing, and so on, so that you can be able to know what the problems are, who are going to stand in the way, what are the issues which are standing in the way. So that is very important to understand, so that you will be able to understand the pressures, where they are coming from. For example, because you are a cooperative, you might find that when you go to the market, then you are pushed aside. So you should be able to be firm enough to say, I have brought my eggs here, I am going to sell my eggs. So we need to be firm as well, because the market is not a kindergarten. It's very important that when we go there, we show our direction. We had a lot of fights with white commercial farmers when we started, but eventually, when they saw that we were standing our ground, they ended up understanding, and we became friends, and we broke new grounds for the benefit of the cooperative because of that. So I think every member must be allowed to participate democratically, and the leadership is voted democratically. So, but you don't vote for a manager who is going to run poultry. That one is appointed because of his skills. So you can see in the picture there that that is a pigsty and the cattle there, and that is and those pictures also show our children there, our school, and so on. So we did a lot. We would travel around the country, making dramas. We had a drama which we called Children of Survival. So it was very popular in the country, and people liked it. So, in other words, those who were, let's say, off duty and they are members of the drama, they would go out, go and perform and mix with other people, and that made many people in this in the country to appreciate the cooperatives. And I must say also that forced the newspapers to write about cooperatives positively, because there we are performing, we're doing this thing. So they 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 they, they were forced to begin to write stories about us and so on. How do you live? How do you do this thing and so on? And that made a lot of people appreciate the cooperative, the cooperatives, both as an enterprise, but also as a social organization. Okay. So I would like to say that it is important for us to actually celebrate our own history, celebrate our own achievements, and bring this into our own dramas to educate people, our own songs, our own poems, our own all these things, so that we are able to influence the future. Cooperatives, I can tell you that if had the government not adopted the SAP, we would be by this time very, very far. There would be many cooperatives which would have been established in Zimbabwe. So I think it is also very important for us to look at what the challenges have been. Now, there is many people in government who are authorities in different ways, municipality, um, all those who you interact with. They, once you say you're a cooperative, they would tend to want to tell you what to do, how to do, and that is wrong. We think that I think that it is important that the cooperatives must not be supervised from outside, but the cooperatives must establish mechanisms within themselves to be able to supervise each other. You'll see that I am proposing, for example, that even if they have got an tribunals or something like that, which would be able to discuss, guide cooperatives accordingly. The other issue, which is a big challenge, is the cohesion, because when you come together, everybody there's their own ways of understanding, and you want to fuse your own experience with the other person's experience. So that is a big problem. So people must be educated quite vigorously so that there is internal cohesion and adequate discipline. So financial support is one of the things which is a big problems which we experienced as cooperatives. We ended up saying, okay, the banks don't support us, this and so on, and we established our own system, which we called Collective Self-Finance Scheme, CSFS. And CSFS, we would borrow this cooperative the money, do the assessment ourselves with some technical people. Once we have done the assessment and borrow this cooperative, they go and buy or do whatever they want to do. When they pay back the money as a revolving fund, sort of. So we did that, and we did that quite successfully. And I think a lot of people envied. Eventually, people who were not members of the society began to apply to work with us, even if they were not members of the cooperatives. So that's how successful we had the impact. So I think I must say that Simukai was a very big cooperative, and it was successful. And I think that what we get from here is that commercially it was successful. Operations were up to standard. And I would like to emphasize that standards must not fall because we are a cooperative. Standards must either be maintained or even be better, because you are creating the future of our own children or generations to come. So it allows us to work together. It allows us to learn from each other. Even if somebody comes out of the cooperative, eventually they will, when they establish themselves separately, they will already know how to work with each other, with other people. There is education, there is progress which we did. We proved that cooperatives can be successful anyway. And if you go to my children or my son or any of our members and tell them that cooperatives cannot work, they will tell you that they grew up in a cooperative, they were educated by the cooperative. Cooperatives is workable, cooperative can be successful. And this inspires solidarity. This inspires the zeal to actually want to do things. So I think it is important that I must say that this success for us helped us to imagine what the future looks like. So I really don't talk about the cooperative and think that it is just a cooperative. I look at the cooperative and say, it is the future. It is the experiences. I think everything starts somewhere. And I think many cooperatives can succeed, can learn. And it is my wish that we can be able to share the successes of Simukai with as many people in Africa as possible. Cooperatives, I think if we take Simukai, I think we have established in a small way, in our own way, a template for development because we achieved many things, as I have already stated. So let me just say again that let's say some guys have been trained they know how to make, let's say, cell phones. We should be able to have cooperatives in that sector where the young people who have the knowledge can put together phones, can develop any other gadgets which would contribute to the development of the society. We need to promote and educate people for this experience is very important because it brings in a new culture. But it is painful. We didn't just achieve this, but it was painful. There were a lot of difficulties here and there, but I can state here that our children, some could be in America, all over Africa, and some in Zimbabwe. They still keep in touch because they bonded. They learned how to live together, how to work together. So cooperatives are very important instruments to be able to assist in the development of our economies. So I think we need to accept that this is one thing which can help us in Africa to achieve a lot of progress. So I think on that one, I've already stated that our governance structure and all these things, I've already explained things, but as a conclusion, I would say once again, if somebody says, can you go and make a cooperative now? I would gladly do it again because I know that it is a good experience. And in fact, this time, with having gone through this experience, I now know more. We can be able to do it much better and with less pain and so on. So I would like to say this is our experience which we achieved and which I would like to share.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. Thank you very much for that. I was so engrossed that I forgot that the time had run. So, but let's see what questions people have. I've been trying to keep tab of them. So there's some that are already there. I would have for you. Somebody asked what was meant by ISAP. I did give them what the meaning was, but you might explain perhaps a bit more why what happened in the case of Zimbabwe and why they were so bad for cooperatives, especially in Zimbabwe. You could say a bit more about that. And then they wanted to know what was meant by what you meant by operating horizontally and operating vertically. So you might want to look at each of those two things. So one, say a bit more about ISAP and why they were bad for cooperatives in Zimbabwe, and then just explain what we meant by operating vertically and horizontally. Meanwhile, please feel free to put your questions on the Q&A section. We'll be monitoring them and making sure that we get them answered. Over to you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you very much. ESAP meant Economic Structural Program that was sponsored by the World Bank and what call it?
The IMF.
The IMF. So it was they made this thing which the slogan was, what was the slogan? Making money is good. So in other words, they put in the psyche of the people of Zimbabwe that the issue was money. Everyone must just go make money, and government must not concentrate in supporting the people, in supporting enterprises. Everybody must look after themselves. So the structural adjustment program, the economic structural adjustment program of the IMF and the World Bank is what created problems for us, because it meant that the government closed the avenues or the support to the cooperatives, even just to have somebody in doing registration of cooperatives. No, they are not. They're not doing anything. These people, they must be retrenched. So a lot of people were retrenched, and the economy of Zimbabwe collapsed because of the effects of ESAP, because everybody was looking for money. So don't wonder why even in your country and everywhere else you find a Zimbabwean, because we were told, look for money, nothing else. Look for money, and everybody was looking for money, and that created a big problem in our side. Then cooperative, let me say, vertical cooperation simply means we were cooperating with the other agricultural cooperatives as an agricultural cooperative. And then when we brought the commercial cooperative, let's say, for example, a cooperative, a transport cooperative, then that I have called vertical. So in other words, we became a union. So in other words, structurally, we would put that cooperative simply above the primary cooperative. They became the secondary cooperative. So that's what I mean. And then from there, we then organized OXIM and CSFS. Above that, we had these organizations which brought all the cooperatives together who were willing to work together. So that gave us strength, that gives us one voice, and that gave us the strength. And I guess that actually helped to get even the support for establishing the CSFS, which was this collective self-finance scheme.
Okay, thank you. Somebody has asked Andrew if there was space for, say, what opportunities currently exist for collaboration between Simukai and Caribbean entities. Now, as I said, Simukai ceased to exist in 2008, but perhaps maybe there are other organizations that exist that are similar that could link up with. So I don't know, what you may have an answer to this question, please. Would you suggest anything that could be done to connect Caribbean and maybe Caribbean and, let's say, Zimbabwean cooperatives, let's put it that way, or indeed African cooperatives with Caribbean cooperatives?
I'm so involved in the cooperatives that even as we speak now, I try to do the training in Lesotho. That's what I was doing here. Although it was not directly my cooperative but is kind of community businesses. And I think that is important for that kind of cooperation. This is very important for me. That question is absolutely important. We need to learn from each other. I can say, for example, those who may need to know what I've got something which I call tell your story, or a program which I say tell your story. In other words, how do you establish an enterprise or a business? A business you start, we try to educate people to say a business you starting with your own story, where you are, what are the issues, and begin to try to solve issues. And that I have got something which I call ZAE dot academy. That is the my website. And then I am,
ZAE.academy. Okay,
yeah,
you got ZAE.academy. Okay, please go ahead
yeah,
then. Yeah.
it's just like that. And then
Okay.
I am able to share experiences. But there are other people there. You'll find stories of ex-freedom fighters. You'll find stories of enterprises there and so on. Community enterprises. That's what we do.
Okay. Thank you very much, Barry. I hope that answers your question. And maybe you would, if you go to that site, you will find some connections. If you wish, you can leave us your contact, Barry, and we can put you in touch with Andrew, perhaps as well, directly. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Right. We don't have any other questions that have come through. There were lots of comments of appreciation, plenty, but not questions. So, and we've run a little bit over time. Okay, Anthony Phillips, I will respond to your question online, because I want to bring matters to a close. Okay, yeah, I'll do that. But I want to bring matters to a close. So I want to thank Andrew, first of all, most importantly, historically, for what you tried to do, or what you did in Zimbabwe at that time. I think it's made an important contribution, and it stands out as an important example. And to thank you today for coming to share your experiences with us. I know that a number of people have expressed very sincere appreciation for hearing what you have to say today. And I wish you many years of being able to advance the cooperative cause on our continent, because we think that is the way forward. So, Andrew, I will answer you, but if you want, you can put your contact details on, and we can make a direct connection. So having said that, thank you all very much for coming in this afternoon to attend to this. I hope you found it useful. It is norm that we will send you a link to the recording when it is ready. So you will receive that, and hopefully you enjoy it. And please spread information about this. And as I said, we will also send you a link to Andrew's book, so that you can read for yourself what it is that he wrote and what tried to do. So thank you very much, everybody, and look forward to seeing you at the next Cooperation Africa webinar. Thank you very much indeed. Good. Bye-bye.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Andrew. Sorry.
Yes. I have written another one.
Okay.
Which I call At a Time Such as This.
Okay. All right.
That one, I sorry, I published in myself.
Okay.
So I don't know how to make it available.
Okay, I'm not sure. We'll try. Let's discuss this and see how we can help to market it. Perhaps, yes. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you, everybody. See you next time. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks.